Now we're going to move on to hear about European Youth Card Association and the specific role that European Youth Card Association plays in promoting and developing youth mobility. The President, not Director, President of EYCA, Jarkko.
From my side as well, and it has been really interesting to hear all these presentations. Unfortunately, there are maybe some repetition in my presentation because I have no idea what the previous speakers were going to say, but I hope you don't mind. I consider myself as a practitioner. I haven't done any youth research or anything on mobility, but I have a personal experience of over 20 years, during which time I have worked quite, I mean, of course, all the time with youth card, and with youth card, youth mobility is one of the key, if not the most important thing, key aims. But I have also worked like within my country, like I worked for the National Youth Council of Finland, Allianssi, and there for a long time I was responsible for also with youth mobility issues. So when I started my youth work life, so to say, and when I was still a young man myself, mostly what youth mobility for Finnish young people it was at that time, it was Interrail. Some of the younger ones don't even know what it's all about, but we had, during the best times, we had almost half of the young people, at least once in their lifetime, they went for an Interrail. That was the big thing. And of course, nowadays, if you talk about the leisure mobility, Interrail is almost dead, and there are planes, but also I think the young people, they want to go further away than just Europe, so they travel much more around the world. And then I was also establishing our own youth exchange department in Allianssi, where I work. And during the 20 years of the existence of this youth exchange in Allianssi, we have sent out something like 15,000 Finnish young people to work abroad through different youth exchange programs. Okay, so maybe that was enough about my background, and just a few facts about the European Youth Card, because I guess not all of you are very well aware what the Youth Card is. So we are a European mobility information and participation card for young people under the age of 30. At the moment we have youth cards in 38 countries, and with about 80,000 benefits and discounts and services related to culture, travel, etc., etc. So in all the aspects of the life of young people. I don't have the latest statistics. I think they are just coming out on these days, but
we're collecting this year's statistics, and it looks closer to 5 million rather than 4.3 million, which it was a year ago. So we're increasing numbers for sure.
And as you can see from, for instance, from this board, youth mobility is, and it has always been, really one of the key aims of EYCA to promote youth mobility. So it is really, since the beginning, I mean since 1980s, youth cards have been promoting youth mobility. I also want to ask you something. Have you ever had a mobility experience yourselves? Those of you who have, please raise your hand. Wow, it's a big majority. I think we are a bit special. We are not like a typical people in Europe. Because yes, like it was mentioned by many speakers, not all young people have the chance to do a mobility project or program. Can I have a few examples, like what you have done as a mobility, yeah?
I studied in Russia, I worked in Brussels, and I spent 1 year as an au pair in Norway.
Okay.
Is that enough?
Some others? Just shout.
European Voluntary Service?
You have done European Voluntary Service, okay.
Youth in Action Program.
Hmm?
Youth in Action Program.
Youth Election Program.
Like Youth Democracy Project.
Okay.
I travel all around Europe.
Okay.
I hitchhiked 30 years ago in Andorra.
Okay. So now so I was thinking before, like, what is youth mobility in my mind, and I just wrote these things down. Like 4 main categories. Studying abroad can be different kind of studies. Many young people during their high school time they go out for 1 year in another country. In the past it was always America, but now there are also other countries. Luckily, there are of course Erasmus program, language courses, or if you go to make all of your studies in a university of another country, or etc., etc. Then there's working abroad, training exchanges. Usually training exchanges are related to your studies, but there are also other kind of training exchanges where you can go to work or do a training in any field of life which is not necessarily related to your studies. Of course, au pairing, summer jobs, etc., etc. There's of course volunteering, different kinds of volunteering. We have short-term voluntary work camps that are usually maybe 2 weeks, 15 people from all over the world come together to do voluntary work for some project which is not a commercial or something, but it's like for the interest of the society. There's of course long-term voluntary programs to work in a third world country, and of course you get voluntary service, and maybe many others. And then the last one, I think, which is a little bit more difficult, is like different kind of international youth exchanges. Already many examples have been mentioned today. Of course, we have Youth in Action group exchanges, the A1 of the Youth in Action program. We have a lot of camps. I don't know how many people take part in, for instance, in the Scout International, how do they call them, jamborees or whatever, but I mean tens of thousands, I think, take part. Of course, seminars, training courses, everything we heard just that the Council of Europe is doing, for instance, I would put them more or less in this last category. So there are, this list is probably not exhaustive, but gives you some ideas what at least I see as a under the heading Youth Mobility Program. And of course, youth exchanges, they can be, we often think about the youth organizations, but of course they can be like sport, culture, whatever thematic subject that is probably, they can be bilateral, multilateral, etc. Then I too have a definition of youth mobility. So I don't know if you can see it, so when I read it. Any period spent abroad of an educational nature and fostering international understanding through the use of international learning. And then this definition, it goes on, it's a bit longer, but I took just some other points. It includes both individual and or collective projects, but it excludes taking up permanent residence in another country, so which is called migration. If you really move to another country to work and to live, that's not youth mobility according to this definition. And it also excludes periods spent on the national territory. So it has to be abroad. And then it has a small exception. Okay, in some countries with a federal structure, maybe it can be accepted that youth mobility, like for instance in Belgium, if you live in Wallonie and you go to Flanders, that can be considered as a mobility. experience. So, so have a guess where this comes from. I didn't invent this. This is Council of Europe stuff. Yeah. From 1990 Youth Ministers Conference, there is an appendix in which this definition is written. And I have always used this as a framework. Okay, it excludes many things which I think, for instance, we were talking already about leisure mobility. I think it's so and so. I mean, like for instance, if you go for 1 week in Mallorca, I don't consider it maybe as a mobility experience, but if you go, if you travel 1 year in South America, I think it's at least very close to a mobility experience in the sense that you learn a lot and you see so many new things and so on. I think also when I found this the document of this Youth Minister Conference, I read it through like the whole document, and I think Council of Europe was really like ahead of their time in the sense that already in 1990, so 23 years ago, they had a lot of good ideas to promote youth mobility in that document. But like David said, then again I was thinking what David said, and you put it in nice English, which I couldn't. Lots of rhetoric, but little action. I think it's true that a lot of good ideas already by the governments in 1990, but we haven't seen so many things happening. There are, of course, some things, but and probably that this is also due to the fact that when the youth ministers in the Council of Europe, when they meet, they are youth ministers, and then the people who decide about, for instance, the visas that you mentioned, they are not youth ministers, they are the ministers of interior or foreign affairs or some other, and probably it's very difficult for them to, youth ministers, to convince these other administrative sectors that this is a good thing. And yeah, still want to stop a little bit for this word migration. So I mean, I think Morana, you mentioned also that it's a threat, or you see it as a threat, or I don't know, remember the word you used, but anyway, that because I mean that if you think about the youth unemployment all over Europe at the moment, I think we are in a situation where we really risk that young people who go out to youth mobility, which we all support, is a good thing, then they don't come back, or they stay, or they go back. I think for many reasons, if they can't find a job in their own country, or if their salary is 3 times higher in where they are, for many reasons they don't come back. So I mean, there is this threat also that, but even so, I think when we talk about mobility, it's something that we all, I mean, all of our governments should support. So why youth mobility? Why is it a good thing? There are a lot of studies made about the impacts of youth mobility, but like in a very limited scope. I mean, I was really happy to hear, like in the beginning, when you said that there are, or many people said that there are no statistics, for instance, because I thought I can't use the modern media anymore because I couldn't find much, like the statistics, for instance. There are many studies, for instance, I found in Finland, but they are very limited, like on certain program or certain year or something like that. But there is no really a lot of information about the impacts of mobility. But these things, at least, I think we all more or less agree that, of course, it's a good thing to learn other languages, or your communication skills improve. And of course, if you study something abroad, it improves not only your formal education skills, but especially the non-formal side, what you learn outside the classroom. And above all, I think it's very important for young people, if it's a quality mobility exchange, that everything goes well and there's a lot of content. It, I mean, makes you more independent. It makes your self-confidence go up. So for a young person, it's a really valuable experience. And of course, you become more. You know, I think nowadays it's not probably okay to use the word tolerant, but your attitudes change. You understand that although people are maybe different than in your own country, you can still learn a lot from them, and you understand what are the differences. So it's very good for the attitudes of young people. And then the last word, improves employability. This is of course something that we hear a lot nowadays with the unemployment situation, and for instance what Jarkko was telling us about from the corporate point of view, that it's good for your future career plans, that if you have experience abroad or not. I just put a little question mark there, because I think there are differences in countries how you see this thing. I remember speaking with a Swiss guy. I don't know if anyone from Switzerland here. This was already 10 years ago. I don't know, maybe things have changed, but he said to me that I don't understand this youth mobility thing. Our employers, they think that if I go abroad for a year, they think that I have been wasting my time. You know, like really seriously, he said that it's not a good thing on your CV if you have a mobility, like a 1 year mobility experience somewhere abroad. And also, for instance, my own government, they're all the time trying to shorten the study period in the universities, because in Finnish universities, the students tend to study 7-8 years, and they want to put it down to 5 years for many reasons, but mainly for to have enough people at the workforce. So I mean, it means that you really don't have a chance to have a year off, for instance, to do something interesting or good other than related to your employment or studies. So some of these things were also mentioned by previous speakers. I think still that unfortunately the mobility, it's like higher education. It's something that you inherit. Basically, it's quite clear from the many studies that the children of the or the parents who have higher education, usually their children much more have also higher education. And I think the same goes with mobility as well. Of course, we have come a long way from that was mentioned that 100 years ago, when they made this grant to, I don't know if it was even 1% of the population, I guess maybe even less. And we have come a long way from that time. Mobility is possible for much more people than it was 100 years ago, or even 20 years ago, I would say. But still, the numbers are quite small if you look at the whole population. For instance, those people who have a lower education, they have much less chances to go to any exchange programs or so basically, if you're not a university student, it's much more difficult to take a mobility project abroad. And of course, all the young people who are at risk of social exclusion, so I'm talking about the immigrants, the people with disabilities, for them it's really difficult to go. And I was really sad to hear that, for instance, in the new Erasmus for All planned program of the EU, the young people with disabilities were not mentioned in the planned as a special group, like in the way that they are at the moment they are in Youth in Action program. So all the associations of the young disabled persons are really worried if the few chances that they have had so far, if they will still exist after this year when the new program comes. Here I also took some statistics that I could find, like for instance Erasmus per year it's 230,000, and it's a huge number. But on the other hand, it's only from 3 to 4% of the whole age group in Europe, so to say. We have maybe 6-7 million people born every year in the European Union, and then if you take the larger Europe, I mean the European Union is 500 million, and Council of Europe is 740 million people. So these percentages are even lower. Youth in Action program, 130,000 participants, and not all of these 130,000 really travel abroad, but they can take part in the project in their own country. So it's about 2%. And EVS, which is I put in brackets in the beginning, the lucky few. EVS is a wonderful program, and I have nothing against the EVS program. Really, it's a great program, but it's some people who work with the program, they have given this nickname for the program. And it's the lucky few. So it's about 0.1% of the young people in the European Union can take part in the EVS. So it's really it's not much. And even with the new program, the Erasmus for All, or whatever it will be called, the goal that the Commission has set is that it would, during the 7-year period, it would allow about 5 million young people to take part, and that's much more than before. But even so, it's 14% of the whole youth population in the European Union. Okay. Challenges of youth mobility. So, this is my own thinking. This is not based on statistics. I think that with different youth mobility programs, we should get the young people out of their country as young as possible. That's why, for instance, when we were talking about the Youth in Action program 7 years ago, for instance, in Finland, we wanted to get the lower limit to 10 years. And it was 15, now it's 13, and we wanted to get it to 10 years because, I think that it's really important to have a good mobility experience as young as possible, because at that age you can still, so to say, have an effect on people's thinking much easier than when you are 23. You don't change your attitude so easily. So I mean, that's one point. And then I don't know if this is true in all the countries, but in Finland we have a desperate problem that boys or young men, they don't want to go out of their country, or even out of their village in some cases. So we have, like in all the mobility programs in Finland, we have 2/3 are women, 1/3 is men. And this is like for us, we see, well, okay, but in the sense that it's not healthy to have this. I don't know if this is true in other countries, but at least.
It's true in the Council of Europe. For the trainings, internal trainings, you have 15 women and 1 man at best.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, there are big differences between different parts of Europe, different countries. Like, for instance, of course, the financial possibilities are different from one country to another to go abroad. The attitudes are different. They were already earlier we heard about the English speakers that maybe they think that it's not useful or necessary to go. And of course, here also the thing that was mentioned, that the family impact in the family support is very important in this. And then the same thing that Natalia mentioned, that the visas that's a really huge problem. And of course, those of us who live inside Schengen, we are very happy we can travel, but for others it's really difficult. I had a personal experience about 4 months ago when I was trying to get my grandchild to Finland from Vietnam, and even if it was proved that it's our grandchild, the Finnish embassy didn't give, and then the Schengen visa. At that moment, I thought that I'm really ashamed to live in European Union, like in the situation that, like a daughter of a Finnish citizen cannot come as a tourist to Europe because they thought that she would be an illegal immigrant, and it was really like a mind-opening experience for me that wow, is this how we treat people from other parts of the world? And it's really like a fortress that we are building in Europe at the moment. Maybe some other challenges also, like it was also Croatia, if you have already like a mobility in your national youth policy, that's really wonderful. I think this is I also took from the same document from 1990. Council of Europe suggested that every national youth policy, and I'm not sure that there is even a national youth policy in all the countries of Europe, but even if there is, it should include a European dimension and consequently the importance of mobility. So, so this was again also 23 years ago, and it's still not many countries who have done this. So it's yeah. And also this one I took from the same document, the last quotation that is there. Reducing all barriers to youth mobility through the introduction of an appropriate youth exchange document of a specific kind. We have been talking about this in the youth field for ages, and still. So this is not to open up the visas completely, but to give like an easier way to come into EU if you take part in a youth exchange of some kind. And I didn't write it here, but the same document also had a recommendation on the youth cards. So it's a very good document in that sense as well. Then just very quickly, what is the role of the organization that I represent here, and what is the role of the European youth cards in all this business? It's like we consider ourselves as a tool for mobility. So we help young people really to be mobile in all the possible ways. And like it was said, it's one of our main aims. And how do we do this? Is that like traditionally we have always provided discounts and services for young people who travel from one country to another. So we have discounts and services, of course, for also when you live in your own city or in your own country, but especially we try to put emphasis on the discounts and services for traveling. And yeah, so we have a special emphasis on discounts on travel, accommodation, eating out, cultural institutions in the country, etc., etc. And of course, one of our roles is also to provide information about different mobility opportunities. So, and encourage young people really to be mobile. Yeah, I think very often we have talked about in our different seminars, and we have talked about the barriers of mobility, and there are many in addition to these mentioned already before. We share the best practices that each of us has done. For instance, the leaflet in your packages, there are some examples. And I want to take just one example, to mention one example which I think is wonderful. In Italy, in the region of Lazio, they have agreed with the regional authorities that all young people who take or go on a mobility experience, the region gives up to 350 euros support. And so it means for your traveling or other expenses, if you go to a language course abroad, or if you go for an interview, have a job abroad, or whatever, like a mobility experience, and so they give so this is for the youth card holders that they can get up to 350 euros support, and I think this is like one wonderful example of best practice in one country, and I heard about it and heard about it even before, but I was asking some weeks ago about it from Angela the details, because in our country we have the youth guarantee, and I was thinking to get this idea into youth guarantee that you don't get only support for employment in your own country, but also for international mobility, but I don't know if they will buy it. So this is just one example, and there are much more for instance, in this brochure. And of course, yeah, we try to use our cards in a very creative way to promote youth mobility and to find new solutions. And with the European Union, the big project that we are doing at the moment is the Youth on the Move initiative, so we are heavily involved in planning that. And with, of course, with Council of Europe, we have the partial agreement, but Natalia already told about that. So these were just like some examples of how the youth cards are working with the mobility questions. I think I'm at the end of my time, so thank you for your attention, and hope to hear much more of this kind of new ideas during these days that we are here in Andorra. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jarkko, how do you think, what are the main barriers young migrants from Europe face when they try to
Porque si no la gente no lo ve, ¿sabes? Y cuando sé que alguien
Well, first
lo
of
puede
all,
ver,
of course,
pues
there are
sí,
all the
pero
administrative barriers, like to get the visa, to get the place where you're going to go to study or to work or whatever you want to do. Then, of course, we have the linguistic barriers. It's not all people speak, for instance, English or the language of the country where they're going. Then there are financial problems. It's not maybe possible for all to pay everything. I mean, not only the travel, but all the other fees that you have to pay if you go, for instance, to a language course or whatever. And then, of course, there are a lot of psychological things that it's not for everybody. It's not so natural to go abroad. I mean, there may be fear of the unknown.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot of psychological things that, especially for the first mobility experience, I think the threshold is quite high, and especially if you go alone. So in that sense, maybe it's better to have the first experience, mobility experience abroad, maybe in a group, or it's maybe a bit easier.
Mr. Jarkko, and what is the connection between the issue of mobility, youth mobility, and the issue of migration?
Well, of course, we have two different terms. When we talk about the mobility, we usually understand it as a project of a certain, that has a beginning and the end, so that you go somewhere and you come back, and it has a content which is pedagogically good, and it's like content-wise, it is planned, and with the immigration, of course, the question is that you go somewhere to work and live, and you don't plan to come back, at least in the near future. So it's basically two different things that we talk about. But of course, these things may be linked, especially in this at this moment in many European countries. The youth unemployment is so big, it's such a big problem that young people, they are thinking about, in many countries they are thinking about moving abroad, so to emigrate abroad. And of course, if you go abroad as a part of a mobility program, and then you see that you like it in this country and things are going fine, maybe you stay. Maybe you don't come back as you were planning. So I mean, these things are a bit related. Yeah.
Mr. Jarkko, and where do you see the youth mobility program in 10 years' time?
I hope that it will be, let's say, in the at the moment it's only the small minority of young people who have the opportunity to go abroad, and I hope that it would be like much higher, that it would be possible for as many young people as possible to think about and to go abroad, and so that it's not only a thing for some elite, but it would be a thing that basically every young person could think about.
How do you encourage young people to go abroad?
Well, I mean, of course, the information part is of course very important, and not only information but like the encouragement. And of course the families have a big role, but also other support systems like the youth information, youth cards, governmental offices, and so to give them information and encouragement, and of course also the financial support is important. I think every government should invest in their young people, also in the field of youth mobility. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jarkko,
Thank
for
you.
your answers. It was really interesting.